Tokyo Echo, the hidden station. It was a cold, drizzly night in Tokyo, the kind where neon lights reflected off the wet streets, casting eerie glows in every direction. Yuto Takahashi, a software engineer, rushed through the Shibuya crossing, his thoughts racing faster than his feet. His company had been working on a new project, an augmented reality app designed to map Tokyo's underground tunnels. It was supposed to be just another tool for city navigation, but Yuto had stumbled upon something strange. Weeks earlier, while testing the app's beta version, Yuto noticed a location that didn't exist on any map. An old subway station deep beneath the city that shouldn't have been there. At first, he thought it was a glitch. But no matter how many times he reset the app or recalibrated the system, the station always reappeared, hidden in a web of forgotten tunnels. Out of curiosity, Yuto decided to investigate. Tonight was the night. Armed with his AR glasses, Yuto descended into a forgotten subway entrance, hidden behind an abandoned Shinjuku alley. He swiped his access card, hearing the softness of an ancient gate opening, revealing a set of stairs spiraling downward. The further he walked, the more the familiar sounds of the city faded, replaced by the unsettling echo of his own footsteps. The old subway system had been closed for decades, long forgotten by Tokyo's rapid modernization. But as Yuto ventured deeper, he felt the air around him change, denser, colder. His AR glasses flickered to life, projecting a dim green glow in front of him, highlighting the rusted tracks and decaying walls. Suddenly, his screen buzzed with a notification. Unmapped area detected. Proceed with caution. Yuto's breath hitched as the image of a long-forgotten station flickered on his display. The station, labeled Nakajima Station, was nowhere on any official records, yet here it was, waiting for him in the digital map, as real as the ground beneath his feet. He followed the coordinates the app gave him, weaving through tight, musty tunnels until he reached a large steel door, rusted shut. Yuto hesitated. His heart pounded in his chest. A strange feeling washing over him. A sensation that he wasn't alone. With a deep breath, he pushed the door open. The room beyond was massive, its walls lined with broken monitors and abandoned control panels. Dust hung heavy in the air, and there was an overwhelming sense of being watched. But the strangest thing was the sound. The low, mechanical hum of old systems running in the background, and voices, faint, distorted whispers, as if the station itself was trying to speak. Yuto's AR glasses began displaying flickers of data, images from decades ago. There on the screen were black and white video feeds of commuters, hundreds of them, waiting for trains that never came. Their faces were blurred, distorted in the static, yet eerily familiar. They looked too real to be just ghosts of the past. Suddenly, Yuto's vision blurred, the glasses glitching violently. The whispers grew louder, more desperate. It was no longer just a low hum. It was a chorus of fragmented voices, overlapping, suffocating. They called out names, numbers, places, bits of information that made no sense. Help us. Find us. Free us. Yuto ripped the glasses off in panic, but the voices persisted, echoing in his ears, reverberating through his skull. He stumbled backward, tripping over a loose wire. As he hit the ground, he saw something move in the corner of his eye. A figure stood at the far end of the station. It was humanoid but wrong, its form shifting in and out of focus, as if it didn't fully exist in this dimension. Its face was a swirl of data, glitching in real time, a digital nightmare brought to life. The creature took a step forward, its flickering body glitching violently with each movement. sending sparks of light through the dark station. Yudo scrambled to his feet, trying to run, but his legs felt like lead. The figure moved closer, faster now, its distorted face inches from his. Its voice was a garbled mess, a mixture of human and machine, repeating the same thing over and over again. Join us. Become one with the echo. Desperate, Yudo grabbed his AR glasses, holding them up like a shield. But the moment he looked through them again, he saw something that made his blood run cold. There, in the reflection of the glasses, he saw himself, trapped, standing among the commuters in the grainy black and white footage. His face was blank, hollow, just like the rest of them. The voices weren't just calling out for help. They were trying to pull him in, to make him one of them. Yudo's body froze as the figure reached out, its hand phasing through the air, reaching for his throat. In a split second of pure instinct, he hurled the glasses onto the ground, shattering them into pieces. The voices stopped. The figure vanished. Yudo stood there, trembling, in the eerie silence of Nakajima Station. He had escaped, but only barely. As he stumbled back through the tunnels, his mind raced. What had he just witnessed? Was it a glitch in the system? Or something far worse? Something that shouldn't exist in the real world? When Yudo finally made it back to the surface, the familiar sounds of Tokyo enveloped him once more. But everything felt different. That night, Yudo deleted the app. But the whispers, they never stopped. Every time he passed by a subway entrance, he could hear them. He could feel it in his bones, the weight of something watching, something lurking just beneath the surface of reality, like a breath on the back of his neck. He wandered through the crowds, yet felt utterly alone. The laughter of strangers echoed strangely, as if it didn't belong to them. It was a city he had known his entire life, yet nothing seemed real anymore. Could he trust his eyes, his senses? Or had he already crossed the threshold? Trapped in an endless cycle of forgotten memories, lost beneath the surface of Tokyo? As Yudo walked, the question gnawed at him. Was this Tokyo even real? Or had Nakajima Station swallowed him whole, absorbed him into the echo, a simulation, an endless loop where reality bent and broke like fragile code? His reflection in the puddle stared back at him, shifting, changing, a flicker, a glitch. He stopped in front of a subway entrance. The doors slid open with a hiss, welcoming him with the promise of answers or oblivion. Join us. Become one with the echo. Echo. A story in the bustling heart of Kolkata, amidst the noise of modern life. There are whispers of something ancient, an unseen presence that lurks in the shadows of the city, watching, waiting. Though many dismiss these stories as folklore, there are those who have encountered her, those who have felt her presence in the quiet hours of the night. The Silent Bride, Unseen. Anaya was a young journalist, recently married, who had just moved into a small, old apartment with her husband, Arjun. The building was charming, nestled between the crowded streets but aged. Its walls seemed to hum with forgotten memories, every creak of the floor a reminder of those who had lived there before. Anaya's work often required her to dig into local legends for articles, and one evening, her editor handed her a new assignment, the tale of the Petni. These were ghosts, she learned, of women who had died young, without their desires ever being fulfilled. They wandered the earth, their jealousy and pain becoming their chains, haunting men and families. Though intrigued, Anaya didn't believe in such things. But soon, the nights in her new home grew restless. At first, it was subtle, a whisper carried on the wind, a shadow flickering just out of sight, a strange heaviness in the air. Anaya often felt a presence in the room, watching her as she lay in bed. Every night, the feeling intensified, leaving her drenched in cold sweat and unable to sleep. Arjun, who worked late most nights, dismissed her concerns. He laughed it off, chalking it up to her overactive imagination from reading too many ghost stories. But Anaya's intuition screamed at her that something was wrong. One evening, while home alone, Anaya felt compelled to explore the old building. Something was drawing her downstairs, into the basement where no one seemed to go. The air grew colder as she descended. The old, rusty door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room cluttered with forgotten objects, relics of lives once lived. But among the debris was something that sent a chill down her spine. A wedding sari, faded but still intact, draped across an old chair. There were photographs, too, framed images of a bride, a woman whose face was eerily similar to hers. At that moment, Anaya realized she wasn't alone. Part 2. The Meeting. The room grew deathly cold, and Anaya's breath hitched in her throat. A shadow shifted in the corner, and then she saw her, a figure in a bridal sari, hair disheveled, eyes wide and hollow. "The Petni," she spoke, her voice like a cold wind. "You took my place." Anaya froze, heart pounding. The ghostly woman began to tell her story, how she had died in that very building years ago, her life stolen before she could fulfill her desire to be married. She was to wed a man who never showed, a man who had broken her heart and left her to die, her spirit tethered to the unsatisfied longing that consumed her. And now, the Petni wanted something in return. Her envy toward living women who achieved what she never could, a loving marriage, was suffocating. Anaya was her new target. You will know the pain of being forgotten. Anaya fled the basement, her mind reeling. But the haunting only grew worse from there. Every night, Petni's presence was stronger. Her reflection seen in mirrors, her cold breath felt on Anaya's neck, her voice echoing in the empty halls. Arjun, who still doubted her, was being pulled away by late-night calls to work, leaving Anaya more vulnerable, isolated. Part 3. The Confrontation. With her last shred of hope, Anaya sought out the local priest, a man known for his wisdom in dealing with restless spirits. He listened intently as she described the Petni, her voice trembling with fear and exhaustion. The priest explained that though the Petni was dangerous, she was not beyond reach. Her torment was born of unfulfilled desires, her pain chaining her to the living world. There was a way, he said, to confront her, to help her move on, but it required courage, understanding, and a great personal risk. That night, Anaya stood in the basement once again, clutching a small talisman the priest had given her, a symbol meant to protect her soul. The room was thick with silence, and the cold air pressed in around her. She waited, heart pounding, until the familiar figure of the Petni appeared, her ghostly form drifting toward her, eyes hollow with longing and anger. "You think I took your place," Anaya said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "But I didn't. You were stolen from this world, and I have only tried to live. I am not your enemy." The Petni's face twisted in a snarl, but Anaya pressed on. "You died with your desires unfulfilled, but holding on to them has only brought you more pain. It's time to let go. It's time to be free." For a moment, the Petni paused, her form flickering, wavering between the woman she had once been and the angry spirit she had become. The room grew still, as if the very air held its breath. Finally, the Petni's eyes softened. There was no more anger, only sorrow, deep and consuming. She nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the truth she had been running from for so long. And with that, her figure began to dissolve, fading into the shadows of the room, leaving only a lingering coldness behind. Anaya stood there, trembling, but she felt something lift from her chest, a burden she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. She had faced the darkness and survived. The Petni was gone. Part 4. New Beginnings. Weeks passed, and Anaya's life returned to normal, or so it seemed. She and Arjun were closer than ever. Their home filled with laughter, passion, and a newfound intimacy that felt almost too good to be true. Anaya, once reserved and distant from the exhaustion of her haunting, had transformed. She was more confident, sensual, and bold in ways that surprised even her. Arjun couldn't get enough of her. Their love life had never been so intense, so consuming. Anaya seemed different, yes, but it was a change that thrilled him. She had become a version of herself that was magnetic, irresistible, and he wasn't the only one who noticed. Friends and colleagues remarked on the glow about her, the way she seemed to move through the world with an almost ethereal grace. She was radiant, alive in a way she hadn't been before. She was still Anaya, yes, but there was something else within her now, something ancient, something dangerous. And Arjun, he didn't mind. The passion, the thrill, the mystery that now surrounded his wife, it all intoxicated him. He chose to embrace the strange, seductive presence that had entered their lives. For now, it seemed harmless. For now, it only made their love burn brighter. But as he lay there, a small voice whispered in the back of his mind, warning him of what might come. How long could he play this game? He pushed the thoughts away, closed his eyes, and drifted to sleep, unaware of the cold smile that curled at Anaya's lips in the dark. And as long as her desires were fulfilled, she would remain. Lyon, a city draped in history, where the Rhone and Saône rivers wind through ancient streets, had always spoken to Mahi in quiet whispers, beckoning her to uncover its secrets. But there are some secrets buried so deep that they should never be unearthed. Mahi had spent her life immersed in history, fascinated by the stories of long-forgotten people, the weight of their lives echoing through the city's alleys and crumbling facades. But none of those stories haunted her quite like the legend of La Dihasine, the uprooted, a woman banished centuries ago who cursed the land with her restless soul. It began, as these things often do, with curiosity. What harm could there be in whispering a name? But from the moment the word left her lips, something shifted in Mahi's life. The atmosphere of Lyon itself seemed to change. The narrow streets of Lyon became suffocating. The trees in Parc de la Tête d'Or loomed like silent sentinels, and the sound of footsteps echoed too closely behind her in the shadows of Croix-Rouse. Most of all, it was a knocking, a slow, rhythmic knock at her door each night. 3 knocks, always 3. At first, Mahi dismissed it, just the sounds of an old building settling, or perhaps a neighbor's door. But as the knocks grew louder and more insistent, a sickening dread settled in her chest. No matter where she was, they followed. In her apartment, on the library's old wooden shelves, even in the quietest corners of the Musée Gadania. And it wasn't long before she realized the truth. La Dihasine had found her. Mahi wasn't alone anymore. The curse spreads. She could still hear the knocking in her mind as she sat down with her friend Clara in the quiet of the Parc de la Tête d'Or. Mahi, desperate to share her burden, told Clara about the haunting, the legend, the knocks, the endless sense of being followed. She spoke in a trembling whisper, but as soon as the words left her mouth, she felt the weight shift onto Clara. Her best friend, who had always been there for her, now stared back with a hollow fear in her eyes. Clara didn't say anything at first, but the knocks came to her that very night. Mahi's heart sank deeper. Now she had cursed someone she loved. She sought help from a local historian, Philippe, meeting him beneath the towering statues of Place de Terreuse. She hoped that his knowledge of Lyon's ancient legends could offer some respite. But as she spoke the words again, Philippe grew silent, and the light drained from his eyes, just as it had with Clara. 2 people, 2 souls now bound to La Dihasine's curse. The knocks came for them, too. She heard their growing desperation in every phone call, every message. And yet, the knocking at Mahi's door persisted, louder and more insistent. No matter how many people she told, she couldn't shake it. It wasn't until she discovered an old book in the dusty archives of the Bibliothèque Municipale that the full horror of the curse was revealed to her. There was only one way to break it: a ritual. She had to sacrifice 3 cursed people, and only then could the curse be lifted. Mahee felt her heart shatter. There was no escape without condemning others. By now, Clara and Philippe were barely themselves, gone and haunted by the relentless knocks. But Mahee needed a third, one more person to complete the ritual. In her desperation, she invited a third friend, someone unsuspecting. His name was Lucas, an old acquaintance who still believed Mahee was simply unraveling from stress. She asked them all to meet at her apartment late one evening, under the pretense of seeking their support. Mahee prepared her apartment carefully. The candles were arranged with precision, their soft light flickering just enough to cast strange shadows along the walls. Symbols, ancient and dark, were hidden in plain sight, scrawled in places where no one would notice unless they looked closely. The tension in the air was thick, but none of them knew what was coming. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, Mahee excused herself and went alone to the bathroom, where she could barely hear her friend speaking. She stood in front of the mirror, her hands shaking as she recited the invocation from the book, the words foreign and thick in her mouth. As she finished the final line, a chill swept through the room, and then the knocking began. 3 knocks, slow and deliberate, right outside the bathroom door. She froze. The knocks grew louder, relentless, shaking the very walls of the apartment. Then came the screams. The unfolding terror. From outside, Mahee could hear Clara and Philippe's frantic voices, their fear turning to panic. But it was Lucas the third who broke the spell. His voice trembled as he cried out, accusing her of bringing this curse upon them. She could hear the terror rising in his throat as he tried to deny what was happening, as he tried to escape the fate that had just been cast upon him. A gunshot rang out, a sharp crack that echoed through the small apartment. Mahee's heart stopped. The knocks outside the bathroom door fell silent. She waited, barely breathing, her hands pressed to the cold sink. There were no more knocks, no more whispers. The curse was lifted. Slowly, cautiously, Mahee opened the bathroom door. The flickering candles cast long shadows across the floor, revealing what remained. Clara, Philippe, and Lucas lay lifeless, crumpled on the ground. The air was thick with the stench of blood, smoke still curling from Lucas's gun. He had panicked, trying to fight off the inevitable, but it had been too late. Her friends were dead. Mahee stood frozen, staring at the bodies scattered around her apartment, their faces twisted in fear and agony. The silence was overwhelming, deafening after so many nights filled with knocks and terror. But it was over. La Dihasine had taken her sacrifice. In the distance, faint at first, but growing louder with every second, Mahee could hear the wail of police sirens approaching. She didn't move. She couldn't. The ritual was complete, the curse lifted. But she was left standing alone in the aftermath, her soul stained by the choices she had made. Lyon, with all its beauty and history, slept just outside her windows. But inside, in the darkened corners of Mahee's apartment, the echoes of La Dihasine would never fade. And as the police closed in, she wondered if, somewhere deep in the city's roots, her own name would be whispered as a new legend, a tale of fear, betrayal, and the price of survival. Do you hear that? The knocks at the door. Tales by the Wolf brings another original story. What would you do if you were in Mahee's place? Comment below and let us know your thoughts. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications if you dare. More chilling stories are on the way. Curious about more forgotten legends? Check out the playlist for other bone-chilling tales from around the world.